Hello, it's Natasha N.K.O, 23rd of June again at 2009 p.m. Continuing to read from Brothers and Sisters by B.B. Moore Campbell. I'm starting chapter 2 on page 33. What happened in chapter 1, we last read about Esther was getting ready to go on a date, wasn't she? We'd met Esther. She was an important role in a bank. She's a black woman, and she is affected by the recent riots in Los Angeles, and she is trying to make an important career move and trying to get support to do that. She's got a white friend at work, and she's expressed that I don't know, the woman basically, I think you could say that she finds her triggering at times. But yeah, so I'll read the last paragraph of chapter 1 and then continue. After she dried herself, Esther stared at her nude body in the full-length mirror in her bedroom. Her dark skin glistened over her flat stomach and round behind, but Esther shook her head in dismay. Jesus, my butt is the size of New Mexico, she thought glumly, and my breasts is Elsie the cow. He probably likes women the colour of the inside of almonds, women with hair that cascades down their shoulders and blows in the wind, and with pert little titties that stand at attention. Why in the world had she let Vanessa arrange this fiasco? The thought, familiar and painful, filled her mind like a migraine she'd been expecting. He won't like me. Chapter 2. Esther was dressed in a navy blue suit and low heels, pacing and fuming by the time the bell rang. She'd been waiting for an hour. When she opened the door, Elizabeth Taylor's passion was scenting the night air, and Vanessa Turner stood before her like a perfumed exotic bird. "Hey, girl," she said a little breathlessly, giving Esther a bright smile and a tight hug that immediately dissipated her friend's anger. Vanessa didn't so much walk through the door as fly in, her long arms extended like wings, her fingers cupped to beat against the air, to grab onto anything that came her way and continue soaring. She was brightly dressed in orange, purple, yellow and red, a long flowing costume that was, as was the case with most of what Vanessa wore, unlike anything Esther had ever seen. Her skin was reddish brown, and she was tall and slim, with high cheekbones that seemed to be sculpted. Enormous gold hoops decorated her earlobes, and a waterfall of light brown hair cascaded down her back. Esther felt as drab as a sparrow standing next to her. "Now, don't be mad," Vanessa said, before Esther could open her mouth. "Charmaine took forever to tighten up this weave," she said, patting her hair. Suddenly, she let out a little squeal and jumped up and down several times. "What? What?" Esther was already smiling in anticipation of whatever adventure Vanessa was about to describe. "On Monday, I'm auditioning for the love interest in Denzel's new movie." Esther laughed. Vanessa eyed her friend with the same cheerful, self-assured expression that had characterized her demeanour through 3 up-and-down years of auditions, callbacks and rejections. She always carried herself like an actress who already had the gig. "I'm ready for the big time," is what Vanessa told her 3 years ago when she moved to Los Angeles from New York after co-starring for 18 months in a hit Broadway play. And although she'd resorted to temping on several occasions, Vanessa still moved under the aura of a true believer. She held fast to the dream that LA would deliver. "I'm claiming this role," she announced, still smiling. Esther laughed again. Vanessa claimed all the roles she tried out for. The ritual had something to do with karma or divine right, or maybe both. "Well, girlfriend, I hope you get it," Esther said. "Be all up in Denzel's arms, chest to breast, lips locked. Oh God, I hope there's a nude scene." The two women laughed. "Enough about that," Vanessa said, peering at Esther. She began frowning. "Why do you have on a suit? You're not going to work. Put on something else, please, please, please." Esther followed Vanessa as she ran up the stairs to her friend's room and opened the closet. All the clothes were lined up in perfect colour-coordinated order. She shook her head. "Damn, you are the neatest heifer on the planet." She flipped through several business suits in muted colours. Who dresses you? Nuns are us? Where's the spandex? Where's your see-through stuff? Vanessa asked. If I had your boobs, they'd be on display, girlfriend. You hear me? She looked at her friend again. You need to sport some cleavage. Esther didn't have anything transparent. Esther didn't have anything transparent, but Vanessa was satisfied with an olive green miniskirt and a matching jacket. An ivory bustier was revealing enough to earn her approving nod. There you go. If you got it, flaunt it. If you don't, wear ruffles. Now, where did I put my ruffles? Vanessa giggled. She turned to Esther. At the end of this evening, you are going to be kissing my feet. This brother is fine. Matriculated at Mandingo Warrior High School, and he's a nice brother too, unlike some reptiles who shall remain anonymous. Esther was grateful that the doorbell rang so that she didn't have to respond to the reference to Mitchell Harris. She knew that tonight's blind date was part of Vanessa's strategy to discourage her from getting back with him. Esther could smell the Armani before she opened the door. The two men trooped in, one behind the other, and the taller one handed Esther a bottle of Chandon champagne. The shorter man gave Vanessa a hug. Watch the weave. Don't bend the weave, Vanessa said. The taller man's mouth dropped open. Now, you didn't really think this was my hair, did you? Felton, I know you know better. Nobody has this much hair but that tramp Barbie doll. Anyway, Esther, you know Felton, and this is your very own blind date, Rodney Simpson. Rodney, this is Esther Jackson. Esther stopped chuckling and smiled at Felton. She was about to extend her hand to Rodney and say hello when Vanessa said, What do you think, Esther? Didn't I tell you that we were meeting a great-great-great-great-grandson of Kunta Kinte? Look at those lips. Ooh, he likes you too, I can tell. Vanessa turned to Esther's date. I told you she was built. She whirled around and faced Esther. He said you had to have big legs or he didn't want to meet you. Yeah, he's one of those body parts men. Didn't ask nothing about your IQ. Here, hand me that bubbly, see? Vanessa said, looking at Esther and nodding to Rodney. This Negro has class. Let's have a little toast before we get this party rolling. I'll get the glasses. She bustled into the kitchen. I refuse to be embarrassed, Esther said to Rodney and Felton. They know I'm a wild fool, Vanessa shouted from the kitchen. Esther shook her head and smiled. I'm glad to meet you, Rodney, she said. Nice seeing you again, Felton. Won't you guys have a seat? The men sat down, and the silence in the room engulfed the three of them. Finally, Rodney said, You have a very nice place. Vanessa said, You haven't been here too long. Just 3 months. You look really settled. And you look really good with your little sweet Hershey bar self, Esther thought. Why was he staring at her like that? There was something wrong with her hair. She smiled, her fingers already inching toward her head. Excuse me, she said. She dashed into her bedroom and patted her hair. Looking in the mirror, she didn't see an elegant woman in an olive green suit. She saw a skinny adolescent girl with more barrettes than braids, hair that no amount of greasing or pressing or coaxing could persuade to grow. Bad hair, nappy hair, got as much hair as dust on a jar. Got as much hair as dust on a jar, the boy said that day as he strolled past the candy store. She was 11, walking alone to buy a baby Ruth, anticipating the sweetness of the chocolate in her mouth. She wore a red dress, she recalled, and a red hair ribbon carefully pinned to a tiny, tiny braid. The boy and his friends screamed with laughter, and she kept walking, looking straight in front of her, until everyone around her was a blur. Even now she could feel the shame that stung her eyes when she walked by that screaming throng of schoolboys, trying to pretend that she didn't care. A certain practiced hardness stole into her eyes, dulling them a little, as Esther gave her hair a final pat and adjusted the collar of her silk shirt. When she looked into the mirror, the skinny girl was gone, and in her place stood a woman layered in Donna Karan, bathed in Carolina Herrera, shielded by 14-carat gold earrings and a diamond tennis bracelet, a protected woman, totally insulated. Esther returned to the living room just as Vanessa came in with a tray holding 4 glasses of champagne and a crystal bowl filled with potato chips. This child is so organised. Everything is in its proper place. It's disgusting, she said, grinning at Esther. Why can't you copy your friend? Felton said with a laugh. Divas do not clean house, baby, she said, passing out the wine. She lifted her glass. To love, she said. Aren't you rushing things? Felton asked. I'm talking about you and me. Aren't you rushing things? He repeated. Vanessa pouted. Diss me in front of my friends? Well, I love me, even if nobody else does. And if you don't want to toast to love, toast to my residuals. She pulled a check for $437.53 from her purse and held it up. To Kellogg's cornflakes, she said, kissing her cheek. Oh, to Kellogg's cornflakes, she said, kissing the check. The two couples laughed and then clinked their glasses together. Was that the cereal commercial you did last year? Esther asked. Yep. Cornflakes have been the cash cow of my career. I wish I could get another gig like that. Soon. As Esther leaned over to toast Rodney, she got a better look at him. He was good looking, muscular, nice fade haircut, thick moustache, straight white teeth, big juicy lips, and she had a feeling that what was hiding under his jacket was a basketball butt of life. What? And she had a feeling that what was hiding under his jacket was a basketball butt of life. Lord a mercy. Rodney opened the door of the big black 300 Mercedes for her, and she slid into the passenger seat beside him. Esther closed her eyes and inhaled the odour of the expensive leather interior. It smelled new. She wondered what kind of work he did. They could take some trips together, maybe drive up the coast to Carmel. Slow down, she told herself, slow down. But the soft mushies were rising up inside her, swimming haphazardly toward her heart, like intoxicated sea creatures. Sitting next to Rodney, her nostrils filled with new leather and Armani, she could feel all the pent-up frustrations and loneliness inside her. Why couldn't he be the one? Was that so much to ask for? She stared at Rodney as he drove. Slow down, she thought. But she couldn't. If he had a house, which he probably did, they could sell both of their homes and get a bigger place. One of those really huge mansions in Hancock Park, or a little mansion. She could feel a soft pulsating warmth crowding under her left breast. She sighed and yielded completely. One thing was sure, their children would be beautiful. The restaurant was in the marina, and the line seemed to stretch to the valley. After adding their names to the waiting list, the two couples found an empty table in the bar and ordered a carafe of Chablis. So where are you from? Originally, I mean, Rodney asked her. Chicago, Esther said. The windy city. Traded all that snow for the balmy breezes? He grinned at her. I traded all that snow for earthquakes, Santa Anas, smog, drought, torrential rains. They both laughed. Where are you from? Watts. A native. Well, he must have pulled himself up by his bootstraps. The thought was comforting. I'm a rare breed. I guess last April must have been like deja vu for you. You mean the riots? The rebellion, Felton said, bending his head away from Vanessa and toward Rodney. It was a rebellion, man. Whatever. The end result was the same. It tore up the neighbourhood. He turned back to Esther. Yeah, it was deja vu, and I hate to sound pessimistic, but the same thing is going to happen to South Central that happened to Watts. What's that? Nothing, that's what. A lot of promises and then nothing. Rebuild LA, shit. Excuse my language, that's a joke. White folks are going to come in, pass out the money to other white folks, give a little to the Asians, give 2 cents to the Latinos, and we'll end up with nothing. Again. Because the banks aren't going to lend us money to start businesses in our own communities, and that's what it's going to take to turn this mess around. And I don't care who gets in next, Bush, Clinton, or that little sawed-off sucker from Texas. If they're not talking about fostering economic development in the black community, they better get used to America being on fire. He sighed and looked at Esther. Look, I don't feel like talking about this tonight. Makes me too mad. Felton tells me you work in a bank. What do you do? I'm the regional operations manager, she said, trying not to sound as smug as she felt. But she was proud. Even if she wasn't in lending, how many black women were regional anything? What do you do, Rodney? I drive a bus for the city. Oh. Esther felt a shiver under her left breast, and then an empty numbness. Whatever magic the evening had possessed suddenly evaporated. A bus driver. Oh. She could feel her smile cracking her face into two even parts. What are you two whispering about? Rodney, are you getting fresh? Vanessa leaned across the table. Fresh as I can, he grinned at Esther and reached for her hand. Esther leaned away from him and placed her two fists in her lap. By the time the waitress showed them to their table, there were definite gaps in Esther and Rodney's conversation. By the time dinner was served, they were barely speaking. What's up with you? Vanessa hissed when the two women went to the bathroom after they ordered coffee. Not a love connection, Esther said. I don't need to be Chuck Woolery to see that. You can still talk to him. We really don't have anything to talk about. Listen, why don't we cut this short? Half an hour later, Esther was lying in bed, switching the channels on her television listlessly. She settled on a rebroadcast of the 10 o'clock news. The Latina co-anchor's face was somber as she described the kidnap, rape, murder of a 13-year-old from Pasadena. There was a picture of a blonde girl with an angelic face, followed by live footage of her distraught parents. Then the Latina announced that two suspects had been arrested. Lord, please don't let these fools be black, Esther said to herself. She held her breath as an on-the-scene reporter who was standing outside the county jail described the men arrested. Finally, she saw the two suspects as they were led into the jail. They were both white. Thank you. Jesus, Esther thought, changing the channel. The telephone rang just as she was about to settle into Live at the Apollo. You got to answer a few questions, girlfriend, she heard Vanessa say. Now, didn't you think Rodney was fine? Answer me that. Yes. Wasn't he nice? Well-mannered? What the hell is your problem? Esther sat up and propped her pillow against the headboard. He was fine. He had nice manners, good conversationalist. I'm just not interested. Saying those last words made her feel safe, strong, and protected. What? What are you talking about? Why not? Vanessa, the guy drives a bus. Vanessa, the guy drives a bus. Her voice was businesslike. What? No romance without finance. That's my motto. You've got to be kidding. That's your priority for making a relationship work. He has to make a lot of money. Vanessa was almost shouting. Hey, he didn't want to talk to me unless I had big legs. Don't lecture me on my values. Rodney's not what I'm looking for, Esther said. And just who are you looking for? Mitchell Harris, king of the assholes? What's wrong with wanting to be with someone who has goals and aspirations that are similar to mine? Listen, I've dated Mr. Blue Collar. I've dated Mr. Starving Actor. I've even dated Mr. Unemployed. I'm sorry, the Jackson University for the Remedial Training of Brothers with Potential is closed. No more mismatches. This isn't about Mitchell Harris. It's about me knowing what I want. Bullshit. This is all about Mitchell, the MD. You saw that big-ass house and long car, all those credit cards, and swore you were in love. The only problem is he has 11 other women. The only problem is he has 11 other women. Esther winced. Vanessa, I did not like Mitchell just because he had money, she said wearily. I really cared about him, and I think you know that. And I think I know where all your caring for him got you. You're not even going to give Rodney a chance. She groaned. You're so bourgeois. No, you're so bougie. Bourgie. She started chuckling. I guess the projects where you grew up had gold numbers over the door, huh? I bet your great-great-granddaddy worked inside Tara. I bet your high yellow grandmama did the hoochie coochie in the Cotton Club. They both laughed. It's not a matter of being bougie. I know what I want, and I'm not lowering my standards, period. My standards, Esther thought proudly. Mine. Esther, you're sitting up in the bed all by yourself, about to plug in your handheld vibrator, talking about you're not dating a man who is fine, has good sense, and likes your Anne Klein wearing ass, just because he drives a bus. How do you know he's not going to law school at night? Even if he is, he still has to play catch-up. I want a man who is matching me or doing better, preferably much better. I mean, okay, you don't have to marry the man, but shoot, you could have some fun. Fun, Esther, is what you're supposed to have when you leave the white folks at the bank. You're about fun, I'm about business. No romance without finance. Esther could imagine Vanessa shaking her head. You are hard on the brothers. Did you ever think that you might enjoy letting the right person catch up to you? The right person is way ahead of me, and this conversation is over. Well, I guess I'm scared of you. The two women were silent. I wonder how Rodney affords that Benz, Esther said. He must be doing a lot of overtime. Or else he's one of the founding members of the Men Who Sleep in Their Automobile Society. That's cold. After Esther hung up, she tried to fall asleep, but she couldn't turn off her mind. She kept thinking about Mitchell Harris, with his soft brown skin and soft brown eyes, with his strong dark hands. Esther could feel the soft mushies rising up in her for the third time that evening. She closed her eyes. She didn't want to think about Mitchell Harris or the 5 on again, off again years they'd had together. Years filled with other women, broken dates and fractured promises. Yo-yo love, Vanessa called it. The relationship is all in your head, her friend told her again and again. Each time she said it, Esther would get furious. She'd hang up the phone or stomp out of her girlfriend's apartment. But sometimes, when she was alone, she'd find herself on the verge of admitting that sleeping with Mitchell wasn't the same as having a relationship. Now she was finally resigned to a life without him. She hadn't heard from the man in at least 6 months, probably more. The last time they'd been together was when they bumped into each other at a party and he ended up going home with her. When she woke up alone, she swore on her grandmother's grave that she'd never see him again. She might not have Mitchell, but whoever she did hook up with had to have as much going for him as she did, and that meant having 2 degrees, owning a home, having money in the bank, and future plans. She didn't give a damn what Vanessa said. Bus drivers need not apply. Esther turned off the television and slid under the covers. She was tired. Her muscles ached as though she'd been in a fist fight. No romance without finance, she whispered to herself over and over. When she placed her head against the pillow, she felt relief, as sweet as a first tear. End of chapter 2. Chapter 3. Can't you stay a little longer? Mallory whispered, pressing her head into Hayden Lear's bare back. She was so accustomed to begging him for more of his time that she felt unashamed that the hope that flowed inside her was stronger than her pride. Hayden sat on the edge of her bed smoking a cigarette. His bony shoulders were hunched, and his brows came together in a consternation. He didn't answer her question. He never did. She circled Hayden's chest with her thin, girlish arms. Please, she said. The word echoed in her head, as though they were going through tunnels, passing through steel and years. She rubbed his arm and groped for his hands. The hard circle of gold that he wore pressed against her fingers. Hayden stood up. Don't be a child, he said. He turned away. He never looked at her when she begged him to stay. Mallory lay back down on her bed and stared up at the ceiling. She could hear Hayden dressing quickly. She smelled his cigarette. The smoke would linger long after he'd gone. She felt his lips as they brushed across her cheek. They were dry and rigid. I'll call you, he said. Come on, move it, Mallory muttered as she leaned her head outside the window of her Lexus, trying to determine just what was holding up the Monday morning traffic, which was going south on the 101. Her words were soon swallowed up by louder, more profane shouts, which whizzed around the line of stalled cars like bullets. Vibrating through the thick, heavy air were the flat, nasal radio voices of Ken and Bob, the streety bantering of the black co-host on V103, and the loudest salsa Mallory had ever heard in her life. The music, the engines and the horns made her head ache. The smog and gasoline fumes stung her eyes. She ducked her head back inside and soon was listening to herself grumbling until she stopped in mid-sentence to stare at the back of a highway sign, poised at least 20, maybe even 30 feet in the air. It was covered with squiggles and wiggles, not letters, just angry, inarticulate symbols, death-defying graffiti. For a moment, she forgot about the commuter hell she was trapped in. How had anyone been able to climb to the top of the sign and make such a mess of hieroglyphics? There were no stairs or ladder. She tried to visualize young black or Latino boys Gangbangers, every single last one of them. Coming out to the 101 at what, 4 a.m., hoisting themselves up the poles that led to the signs. Or did they bring ladders? Why was it so important, these screaming letters that made everything look so dismal and hopeless? She took a last look at the swooping symbols. They seemed to throb with life. Each one was like a raised fist beating against the world. As she passed under the sign, Mallory couldn't help but shudder, remembering that she'd seen the same kind of angry scribbling on a wall less than 3 miles from where she lived. A little further on, Mallory discovered the cause of the delay. Looky-loos were slowing down to watch policemen talk to 3 black teenage boys wearing bright golden hoops in their ears and oversized jeans and shirts, who managed to look menacing even as they stood with their hands locked behind their necks. Good. They caught them, she thought, as she sped past. These were the animals who defiled public property and shot innocent bystanders. They were just like the pigs who beat Reginald Denny. Just thinking of the helpless white man being dragged from his truck for no reason, no earthly reason, except that he was white, made Mallory tremble with fear. She couldn't get that tape out of her mind. It gave her nightmares. Oh, sure, it was awful, just awful what those cops did to King. Totally unnecessary. But King was a convicted felon, and he was running away. If he had cooperated, he wouldn't have been beaten. Police didn't beat people without provocation. The 4 cops were just doing their job, trying to protect innocent people, and now they were going to suffer for the rest of their lives. She'd read that 2 of them were about to lose their homes because of their legal fees. But those monsters who attacked a completely innocent man would probably have their defence paid for by the NAACP or the city. They didn't have any reason for attacking Reginald Denny except that he was white, and black people had the nerve to call all white people racist. Mallory shuddered as she took one last glimpse at the hoodlums. Couldn't they just kill each other without messing up everything around them, without hurting other people? Mallory gasped, horrified as she recognised that she was mouthing her father's bigoted reasoning. She could still remember how her father rushed out and found a realtor and put their house up for sale the same day the first black family moved into Park Crest, their old mid-city neighbourhood. "We're not living around coloureds," her father said, his face red, his mouth contorted. "They're dirty, they steal, and they bring down property values." For years she thought of coloureds as a disease. But when some were bused to her high school in the San Fernando Valley, she met 1 or 2 black girls she really liked. "A few of them are different," her mother whispered, admonishing her not to tell her father about her friendships, and of course not to think about bringing any of the Negro girls to their home. Mallory knew better than to tell even her mother that she thought one of the black football players on the school's team was unbelievably cute. Still, her father's words had marked her. The thought of venturing anywhere near Parkwest filled her with fear. She stared at the graffiti. She didn't want anyone to die. She didn't. The young boys who fought in gangs and covered every conceivable space with graffiti didn't have dads in the home or proper guidance. They needed care and attention, recreation centres, something. Mallory looked below onto the streets of Hollywood. Beyond the squalid residential area lay Sunset Boulevard and the gleaming dome of Capitol Records. She took a lipstick from her purse and put colour on her tense lips. In her rear-view mirror she could see a young Latina in the Honda behind her, her beige cheeks dusted with blush, her stiff blue-black bangs swooping upward like frozen butterfly wings. She was diligently applying lipstick too. Mallory felt the heat when she opened the door of her white Lexus in the parking lot across the street from Angel City National Bank. Nearly 85 degrees, and it was just 7:30. Yet even as she stepped out into the sweltering air, her shoulder bag and briefcase swinging by her side, she had to admit that it was cooler in Los Angeles than in the San Fernando Valley, that sprawling furnace of a suburb that she'd just spent 45 minutes travelling from. At least if she lived in a city, she could wipe out the commute, she thought. She shook herself a little and then brushed away the strands of blonde hair that fell in her face. What in the world had made her think about that? Living in a city was out of the question now. Nobody wanted to live in Los Angeles. Everybody wanted to get out. Mallory put her fingers on the roof of the Lexus, then slid her hand inside her jacket. prying apart the beige cotton suit coat and the silk blouse that seemed plastered to her back. When she had finished, she was dismayed to see that the front of the straight skirt she wore was creased with tiny wrinkles. God only knew what the back of her jacket looked like. She pushed aside the bangs that clung to her damp forehead, then retrieved her briefcase and purse. She stared at her diamond-studded gold Rolex much longer than was necessary, then touched it gently with her index finger. He can give me everything but himself, she thought. Mallory felt tears, like hot pinpricks, stinging her eyes. Don't start, don't start, don't start, she said aloud. It was too early in the morning to cry about Hayden Lear. She looked around at the parked cars. Where was Esther? They were both early birds, and most days they left the parking lot together. The camaraderie was a pleasure that Mallory was more dependent upon than coffee to get her going in the morning, especially on days like this when she felt so empty. It was becoming harder and harder to go to bed with a man in her arms and wake up with no one. Her little finger patted the rim of her left and then her right eye, carefully wiping away the tears so as to not smear her makeup. She looked around again. Esther always said something that made her laugh. If the events of April 29 had taught her anything, it was that the world needed human kindness and friendship. Well, she was doing her part to make the world a better place. As Mallory began heading toward the exit, she spotted Esther's silver BMW turning into the lot. She waved wildly, buoyed by the surge of energy and happiness that suddenly flowed through her. Mallory waited at the parking lot exit, admiring Esther as she walked towards her. The black woman wore a navy suit, matching shoes and a pale pink blouse. She's always so impeccably dressed, Mallory thought. And what a body! Why couldn't she have an ass like hers? She smiled as Esther approached. How did it go? She asked. Esther gave her a blank look. Your blind date? Oh, that, Esther said, her voice flat. Not a love connection. She looked at Mallory, trying not to think about what Michelle had told her. Ah, Mallory felt surprisingly disheartened. She'd thought of Esther over the weekend and pictured her having a good time. Esther couldn't help smiling. You were expecting a wedding? Mallory laughed lightly. No, I just wanted you to like each other and have a good time, fall madly in love, have passionate safe sex in the parking lot of the restaurant, and then have a wedding. Is that too much to ask? Esther was laughing before she could stop herself. Well, if it's any consolation, he was okay. I'm just picky, she said with a sigh as they reached the entrance to the bank. I figured as much. Mallory was almost reproachful. Esther tilted her head and looked at her. Oh, you did? Esther, you're gorgeous. You're bright. You're fun. And you're not seeing anyone. You must be playing hard to get. A good man is hard to find, she said, then quickly averted her eyes. But the dearth of professional black men wasn't a topic she'd ever discussed with Mallory. No, dear, that's a hard man is good to find. The two women laughed uneasily. Mallory wondered what the sudden awkwardness between them was about. Sometimes, without warning, Esther would get a look in her eyes that was like a bridge she couldn't cross. She glanced down at her skirt. Do you have your steamer? She asked. In my office. The two women passed through the empty lobby, walking by the vacant tellers' stations. The bank didn't open to the public until 10 o'clock, although most of the staff arrived by 8:30. Outside the picture window, both women could see several people awaiting their turn at the ready teller. Esther's office was located at the end of the bank's central area. The outer wall was made of glass so that she could observe the tellers and service representatives at their duties. Esther unlocked the wooden door and Mallory followed her inside. The black woman reached into one of the drawers of the teak desk and pulled out a small steamer, which she plugged into an outlet on the wall. A few minutes later, Esther approached Mallory with the steamer in her hand. Pull your skirt away from you so that you don't get burned, she said. Mallory did as she was told, but still felt a burst of hot air across her thighs as Esther guided the steamer along her skirt. When Mallory looked down, the wrinkles had disappeared. We don't want you wrinkled for the staff meeting, honey, Esther said. Mallory groaned. Oh, God, I forgot. How could you forget? It's Monday. Esther stared at Mallory. Pampered little valley girl. Esther knew that she couldn't afford to forget one single detail. Despite the sudden resentment she felt, she made her voice sound normal. You're not having any problems, are you? Problems? You mean besides a major recession? You mean besides the fallout from a major riot? You mean besides the fact that the entire department has been under the gun since April 29th? We're supposed to be doing these special interim loans to businesses that will eventually qualify for federal funding. And I've been trying to meet with some guy from the Rebuild Project who is going to set up a process so that we can identify those with legitimate needs. But every time I try to meet with him, he cancels. So consequently, there is no process in place and we've been winging it, which isn't my fault, but of course Charles isn't going to see it that way. Some of my clients are really in trouble. I have a lot of Koreans. I have this family, the Rims, RHIMS. They owned a paint store that got torched. They are way underinsured, and I don't think they're going to qualify for government assistance because they look a little too good on paper. The husband said he was seriously thinking about going back to Korea. It's so sad. They're such hard-working people. A lot of hard-working people lost out during the civil unrest, Esther said, thinking about what Michelle had told her. She tried to make the words glide smoothly off her tongue, but she ended up flinging each one at the white woman like a tiny rock. Mallory winced. She wanted to ask Esther, what did I say? But instead, she forced her words to tiptoe around the rising indignation that had suddenly stiffened Esther's lips and hardened her glance. Yes, the entire city lost out, she said carefully, trying to keep her tone even and light and free of the resentment she suddenly felt. Why did she always have to watch her every word around Esther? Esther swallowed the small, hard lump that suddenly clogged her throat. It wasn't good to get so angry, to lose control. Mallory didn't mean anything. She had to watch herself. Mallory was a political ally, even if she wasn't a friend. Do you have a written plan? Are you kidding? Esther looked at her watch. The meeting won't start for another hour. Write something down, anything. You know Charles, he's not going to read them, but if he sees you referring to notes, it will make him feel secure. The man is such a jerk, Mallory said with a sigh. Yes, well, we can't do anything about that. Esther drummed on her desk with a pencil. I'll give my report first, and I'll drag it out. That way, there won't be much time left for you. Besides, Charles will be so busy getting on Kirk's case. God, I hope he closed that Winthrop deal. I'm not in the mood to see a massacre. Poor Kirk, Mallory said. Is there a history behind Charles's hostility? What does he have against the guy? Mallory gave a short laugh. You mean besides the fact that Kirk has hair and is 2 feet taller and 10 times smarter than Charles? Get real. Competition. That's the... They turned simultaneously toward the voices coming from the lobby. Looking through the glass wall of Esther's office, they saw 5 men and 1 woman, all white, standing in front of the elevators. They finally put a woman on the board, Mallory said. There were layers of pleasure in her voice. Esther saw Mallory smile, a smile that invited her to be happy about the lone woman too, a smile that said they shared some great victory. She searched for the proper North Side response. That's really great. Gee, how about that? The phrases drifted too quickly for her to even a word. No, the phrases drifted too quickly for her to catch hold of. What gurgled up in her throat was a familiar sound, not even a word. It wasn't North Side, it was deep South Side, and didn't belong in Angel City. But the intonation, handed down from her mother and grandmother and other powerful ancestors, couldn't be stopped. Oomph! Mallory's shoulders jerked. The startling noise sounded like a grunt, but she discerned the disdain, sensed even malice. But when Mallory stole a look, the black woman was smiling at her. Looking at Esther, she thought, it's almost as if she's wearing a mask. End of chapter 3. Great. Thanks for listening.